Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Hollis from the University of California at Santa Cruz, and today I'm going to discuss some research we conducted this past year that evaluated the effectiveness of emotion tracking to promote behavior change. For many of us, changing our behavior is difficult, and the goals we have to change our behavior can vary dramatically. Some of us want to cut down our alcohol consumption, modify our diets, stop smoking, and so on. Unfortunately, this difficulty many of us have with changing our behavior goes beyond just minor inconveniences such as wheezing a bit more when running for the bus or dealing with occasional hangovers. This difficulty has serious implications for quality of life and mortality rates. In first world countries, over half the leading causes of death are the result of preventable behaviors, including tobacco use, high blood pressure, and physical inactivity. Fortunately, many of us are privileged with access to smartphones and fitness trackers that can help us modify these pernicious behaviors. We've seen a sharp increase in phone applications targeted toward behavior change and fitness trackers to make monitoring easier and more precise. However, a key characteristic of many behavior change systems is that they are geared toward a fact-focused cognitive monitoring of behavior. The phone application displayed here is one of the most downloaded apps to help users quit smoking. Similar to many others, this app highlights statistics and different types of quantitative metrics to motivate users and track progress. While such information is clearly valuable, there are still major shortcomings to designs such as this. Most importantly, these designs are data-oriented, and they assume that people make cognitive rational decisions about goals. And here's really the big question that I will address in the rest of this talk, which is, what about emotions, and what role do they play in motivating our behavior? I argue that most current behavior change designs severely neglect this important aspect of human psychology. Now, there are entire courses dedicated to the functionality of emotions for behavior, but I'm going to try to give a crash course in about 2 minutes. Emotions serve an important role in guiding our behavior, including providing a basic punishment and reward system. So if you encounter something that responds in pleasure, that will have a positive emotional connotation. If you encounter something that causes you discomfort, that will have a negative emotional connotation. These emotional responses are short-circuit higher level These emotional responses can short-circuit higher level cognitive processes by receiving information before cortical areas we evolve later. So overall, emotions serve as a rough, quick heuristic to help people decide whether they should approach or avoid behaviors and things. For example, if your personal vice is smoking, the sight of a cigarette can initiate an immediate positive emotional response from thinking about the enjoyment of a cigarette. This positive response can then drive you to smoke. Now, fortunately, we evolved higher levels of thinking to deter these basic drives. So when deliberating a cigarette, you might recall the statistics of cardiovascular disease due to tobacco use, and that will deter you from smoking. In addition to understanding how emotions relate to behavior, it's important to dispel an idea of how the two interact. The common understanding is that emotions drive our behavior. So if someone feels stressed, that compels them to have a drink. But in fact, current emotions don't seem to drive behavior. A meta-analysis of over 400 studies showed a very weak association, with only 17% of results having a significant relationship between current emotional state and behavioral outcome. So how do emotions relate to behavior? Well, rather than current emotions driving behavior, it appears anticipated emotions do this. The same meta-analysis found that anticipation of how a behavior would influence their emotions was far more effective, with approximately 90% of these results being significant. To explain this theory briefly, emotions are described as a feedback loop, where it's not just the current emotional state that's important, but the desired emotional state of the individual, and how certain behavior might pave the way to that emotional outcome. So, for example, it's not just that someone is stressed and therefore drinks, but that someone is stressed, wants to feel better, and therefore has a drink to possibly achieve that outcome. There are many opportunities for HCI and design to apply this theory. For many, there's an immediate association between the positive emotional reward for engaging a bad habit and the long-term consequences of those behaviors are not immediately considered. So, for example, someone looking at a bottle of bourbon might have an immediate recall of the positive enjoyment from drinking, but without consideration for tomorrow's hangover. We can design technology to help people link their bad habits with the delayed emotional consequences, and in doing so, facilitate behavior change. As a result, this focus this improved focus on long-term emotional consequences can motivate people to not indulge that behavior. We were interested in applying this theory to examine how emotions can be harnessed to improve behavior change technologies, and specifically to explore whether awareness of delayed emotional consequences can motivate behavior change. To evaluate this question, we built a system that exposed people to emotional consequences of engaging in unwanted behaviors, and compared this against an alternative baseline system that reflected many current behavior change systems, which simply track contextual information about a behavior and progress with no emotional focus. We recruited 35 participants between the ages of 19 to 26 and administered a pre-intervention survey to allow for self-selection of a personally important behavior change goal. The goals range from media consumption, dietary choices, smoking, procrastination, bodily compulsions such as nail biting, correcting oversleeping or excessive napping, and then a miscellaneous category, which included goals such as avoiding excessive spending or caffeine consumption. The pre-intervention survey included questions to address possible confounds to our measures. First, we wanted to ensure that all participants set concrete goals for themselves, as there could be natural variance in how abstract each participant's goals were. Given past research has shown that concrete goals promote better behavior change success, we wanted to control for this variance and also identify whether participants wanted to completely stop or merely reduce their undesired behavior. We also included questions to identify how personally committed the participants were to these goals and how capable they felt they were able to achieve that goal, again allowing us to identify possible confounds to our results. I will first talk about the fact-focused system, which is a reflection of some behavior change apps today, where contextual information is tracked and participants largely track just their progress against the goal. First, we wanted to know how often they indulge in their bad habit, so that both we and the participant could track their progress over time. Next, we had them specify contexts and triggers of the habit. So, for example, location, social company, so who they were with, and then any additional miscellaneous information they might find valuable. After the participant submitted a record, the table would immediately display with past entries to show the pattern of their habit and indicate progress. For this participant, her particular problem was impulsive spending, so she could compare days in which she did well versus not did well. For example, comparing days she was unsuccessful because she didn't plan ahead against days in which she planned appropriately and didn't spend beyond her budget. That was a fact-focused condition. Now let me describe what the emotion-focused condition looks like and where there are differences. Similar to the other condition, we had participants record the number of times they engaged their bad habit each day. We also had participants recall one specific instance that day in which they engaged their bad habit. But unlike the other condition, we wanted participants to recall emotional content from that event. So they were prompted to write a description of how they felt at the time they engaged their bad habit. So, in the emotion-focused condition, we encourage participants to analyze their feelings about the event both at the time and how they feel about the event now, giving a written description of how they feel thinking about engaging in their bad habit. And then they also provided, for both of these time points, an emotion rating on a 1 to 5 scale of how they feel. Each time a participant submitted a record, a confirmation page would display showing past entries. The goal here was to clearly display differences in emotion ratings for days when the habits were or were not engaged. So we would show date, habit frequency for that day, emoticon selected for the given emotion rating, and how they currently feel about their bad habit. The text to the right are written descriptions of the participant's current feelings. For this participant, her problem was excessive snacking. So let's look at 2 examples. Okay, so there's some emotionally charged language here, so I apologize. But, so for example, on an unsuccessful day in which she engaged her bad habit, she wrote, "Damn, I'm mad, I effed up so bad. I did not resist when I should have, I was too weak." So here she is clearly engaging negative emotions and regret about her bad habit. In contrast, on a successful day, she writes, "I think to myself, is it worth it? And that helps me resist snacking if I'm not hungry." And In an even more positive entry, around the same time, she had written, "I've been thinking more about the pros and cons of snacking, which has helped me resist it more than I did in the past. I'm glad I'm being more aware and attempting to make a change." Okay, so this is the general outline of how the study was conducted. In the beginning, participants selected a goal. The intervention was conducted over a span of 21 days, with participants randomized into a fact focus or emotion focus condition, unaware of the other conditions. And then at the end, we collected ratings of self-perceived success, gathered their daily log files, and conducted exit interviews. We went on to evaluate 3 success measures. These were self-perceived success, so how well the participant believed they had improved based on a post-intervention question. We also had days of total abstinence, so a comparison of how many days the habits were not engaged as determined by daily logs. And then also average habit frequency per participant. Again, assessed from daily log files. In the post-intervention survey, participants were ranked their responses on a 1 to 9 scale to the question. You chose a goal in the beginning of the study. Please rate how much progress you have made toward your goal. We found that participants in the emotion focus system saw themselves as more successful with an average score of 5.8. By comparison, the fact focus condition had an average score of 4.1. This is promising as it partly supports our hypothesis that emotional focus would correspond to better outcomes. However, we found that while the data was relatively distributed in the way we would expect, there was no statistical difference for the mean or median habit frequencies between conditions. This could be explained by the variance that resulted in comparing different goals, and also the imprecision for some behaviors such as median consumption, which do not have cleanly discrete measures. For a clearer measure of success, we compared the average number of days in which the habit was not engaged at all. So we looked at strictly the abstinence rate for the number of days in which the habit frequency count was 0. To give some context, each participant provided about 15 entries. We found the emotion focus condition corresponded to more days of no habit engagement, with a median score of 5. By comparison, the fact focus condition had a median score of 0.5. These results were interesting. We went further to explore possible underlying mechanisms for behavior change through a sentiment analysis of participant log files. Our sentiment analysis was conducted using LINQ, which stands for Linguistic Inquiry and Word Count. LINQ is software which calculates the relative degree to which people use different categories of terms. For example, LINQ contains a dictionary of emotion-associated terms, and then can calculate from a text file whether it has 10% emotional terms or 2%. We wanted to explore whether success or failure was more important at determining behavior change, and understand whether people are generally more motivated by positive feelings associated with success or negative feelings following failure. We therefore conducted a sentiment analysis for successful days in which the habit frequency count was 0 against unsuccessful days which had a habit frequency count of 1 or greater. As expected, we saw a significantly higher proportion of negative emotion words for unsuccessful days. What was far more interesting was that a greater use of negative emotion words on unsuccessful days was associated with better outcomes on 2 of our measures. Greater use of language signaling negative emotion corresponded to higher ratings of self-perceived success and more days of complete abstinence in which the habit was not engaged at all. As expected again, we found a greater use of positive emotion terms, so words such as excited, happy, satisfied, on successful days, so days in which the habit frequency count was 0. However, strangely enough, we found that positive emotion terms on successful days did not correspond with better outcomes for any of our dependent variables, suggesting that negative emotion terms on unsuccessful days may be more vital to motivating behavior change in this domain. Following the intervention, we interviewed 12 people to probe their experiences and to gain insight into processes underlying behavior change. Overall, there was a positive reaction to emotion tracking. For example, this participant states, "I feel like looking back from where I was in the very beginning, I think I'm definitely better off. I think it's very apparent that there is value in being able to express my feelings and understand the connection between these 2 events. This was a really great experience looking back at it." The importance of emotion tracking was even indicated by one fact-focused participant, who suggested that we improve our design by incorporating an emotion rating scale. As she put it, they should have included maybe how it made us feel. Probably not open-ended, but choose from 4, bad, good, okay, to see how people feel about their bad habit. To which I was like, gee, that's a really great idea. No. We also asked participants about their preferences for recording only successful or unsuccessful days. Of the 12 interviews, a majority of participants preferred recording successful days only. 4 participants recommended recording both success and failure, and 3 participants recommended failure only. This is interesting because our quantitative data showed that emotionally engaging failure corresponded with better outcomes. Yet when directly asked, participants seemed least interested in focusing on failure. This is an interesting paradox between what users want and what seems most useful, and there are design implications we extract from this. While participants may prefer recording successes only, our data suggests that engaging failure is vital. People may not enjoy logging about failures, so developing a simple, quick interface could be a useful way to get minimum engagement. In this example, even multiple choice options to select reasons why someone may not want to meet their exercise goal and how they feel about it could be a way to engage failure on a very basic level. There's also been a great deal of interest recently in automatic emotion detection. This has been incorporated into research and commercial products. Currently, many of these systems are providing only real-time intervention to provide calming exercises during the heat of the moment. These systems hold great promise, but they are missing part of the picture by disregarding the role that active reflection can have in these behavioral interventions. As one participant stated, it was a lot easier to reflect on how I felt afterwards because I wasn't just blinded by whatever emotion I was feeling. So again, you can have ease of logging through automatic detection, but perhaps including some reflective properties could be beneficial. While this study focused specifically on the extinction of an undesired behavior, emotional motivators may function differently for systems that aim to increase a behavior. For example, if the system was instead oriented toward promoting an entirely new behavior such as exercise, we might expect that positive emotions would be more instrumental in that context. So in summary, we conducted a theory-motivated study to examine the differences between a fact-focused versus emotion-focused behavior intervention. Beneath this, emotionally engaging failure seemed critical to extinguish behaviors. From these results, we suggest that future systems consider integrating some emotional reflection. Thank you. Yay!